Kang Doyen had never expected to leave Earth. He was a translator, nothing more. He spent his days in a small office at the United Nations building, converting documents from one language to another. It was quiet work, safe work, the kind of work that never made history. But history had other plans for him. The message came from beyond the stars on a Tuesday morning. After 50 years of sending signals into space, humanity finally received an answer. The Valanthi Dominion, rulers of 17 star systems, had been watching Earth for decades. Now they wanted to meet. The world celebrated. The world panicked. Governments argued about who should represent humanity. Scientists prepared questions. Religious leaders debated what it all meant. And somewhere in the chaos of those first weeks, a clerical error changed everything. Doyen was supposed to prepare translation documents for Ambassador Yoon Taeson, the man chosen to meet the aliens. Instead, someone typed the wrong name on the transport manifest. By the time anyone noticed the mistake, Doyen was already 3 light years from Earth, sitting alone in a silver ship he did not understand. He tried to explain the error to the Valanthi escort who came to collect him. They did not care. A human had been sent. A human would be presented. That was all that mattered to them. The journey to Valanthus Prime took 11 days. Doyen spent most of that time staring out the window at stars he could not name, wondering if he would ever see his home again. He thought about his mother, who still lived in the small apartment in Busan, where he grew up. He thought about his friend Ji-yeon, who had laughed when he first told her about his boring government job. He thought about all the things he had never done, all the words he had never said. The ship landed on a world of crystal and light. The Valanthi capital city rose from a purple sea, its towers reaching toward 3 pale moons. Everything gleamed, everything was perfect, and everything made Doyen feel very small. His escort led him through streets that seemed to clean themselves, past buildings that hummed with energy he could not see. The Valanthi people stopped to stare as he passed. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with silver skin that caught the light like polished metal. Their eyes were large and violet, filled with an emotion Doyen could not read. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was disgust. The palace stood at the center of the city, a mountain of white crystal carved into impossible shapes. Guards in flowing armor flanked the entrance, their weapons aimed at nothing and everything. Doyen walked between them, trying to keep his breathing steady, trying to remember that he was supposed to represent his entire species. The throne room was larger than any building Doyen had ever entered. 1,000 Valanthi filled the space, arranged in perfect rows, their silver faces turned toward the raised platform at the far end. There sat the High Sovereign Valeth, ruler of the Dominion, wearing robes that seemed to be made of living starlight. His expression was cold. His eyes were colder. Beside him sat a woman who stole Doyen's breath. Princess Lyrian was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Her silver skin was darker than the others, like moonlight on deep water. Her violet eyes held a sadness that seemed older than her face. She wore no crown, no jewelry, nothing to mark her as royalty except the empty space that surrounded her. No one stood within 10 feet of her throne. Doyen was pushed forward until he stood alone in the center of the room. 1,000 alien eyes watched him. 1,000 alien minds judged him. He wanted to run. He wanted to hide. He wanted to wake up from this impossible dream. Instead, he bowed. It was not a deep bow, not the kind of desperate groveling the Valanthi probably expected. It was the bow his grandfather had taught him as a child, the bow of one person showing respect to another. When he rose, he met the High Sovereign's eyes without fear. "My name is Kang Doyen," he said. His voice did not shake. He was surprised by this. "I come from Earth. I am honored to stand before you." The court murmured. Some laughed. The High Sovereign raised one long finger, and silence fell like a blade. "You are the best your species could send?" Valeth's voice filled the room without effort. "A small, soft creature who cannot even look away from his betters?" Doyen thought about lying. He thought about pretending to be someone important, someone worthy of this moment. But lies had a way of growing, and he was too tired for that. "I am not the best," he admitted. "There was a mistake. I am only a translator. I was never meant to be here." More laughter, more whispers. The High Sovereign leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "And yet here you stand. Do you know why we called your kind to this place, human? Duyun shook his head. We have watched your world for many years. We have seen your wars, your hatred, your endless destruction. We have seen you poison your own air, murder your own children, burn your own forests. You are a species of chaos, a species of violence, a species that should have destroyed itself long ago. The words struck Doyen like physical blows, but he did not look away. We called you here to decide your fate, Valeth continued. In 7 days, this council will vote. If we find your kind worthy, you will be welcomed into the community of civilized worlds. If we do not, your planet will be quarantined. No Valanthi ship will ever visit your system again. You will be alone in the darkness, forever. Doyen felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. 7 days. 7 days to prove that humanity deserved to exist. 7 days to convince 1,000 beings who already hated his kind. I understand, he said quietly. Do you? The High Sovereign smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then let us see what your species is truly made of. The court began to disperse, flowing around Doyen like water around a stone. He stood frozen, overwhelmed, lost. But before he turned to follow his escort, he glanced back at the throne. Princess Lyrian was still watching him. Her violet eyes held something he had not seen in any other Valanthi face. It was not hatred, it was not disgust, it was interest. Then she looked away, and the moment passed, and Doyen was led to his quarters to await whatever came next. He did not sleep that night. He lay awake in his alien room, staring at an alien ceiling, thinking about 7 days and the weight of 8 billion lives. Somewhere in the palace, the princess who could not be touched was thinking about him too. The rules were simple. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not show strong emotion. Do not touch anyone, especially royalty. Breaking any of these rules meant death. Doyen learned this on his first morning in the palace. His escort, a tall Valanthi named Corveth, explained the laws with the bored voice of someone who had repeated them many times before. He did not seem to care if Doyen understood. He did not seem to care about anything except finishing his duty. Why is touching forbidden? Doyen asked as they walked through the endless crystal halls. Corveth stopped. He turned slowly, his violet eyes cold. Because touch is truth. When a Valanthi touches another, they feel what the other feels. Every emotion, every secret, every hidden thought becomes known. It is the most intimate act possible. To touch without permission is to violate someone's soul. Doyen thought about this. On Earth, people touch constantly. Handshakes, hugs, pats on the shoulder. It was how humans showed they cared. Here, that same gesture could end his life. And the princess? He asked. Why does no one stand near her? Corveth's expression changed. For a moment, something like pity crossed his silver face. The princess is different. Her gift is stronger than anyone in the Dominion. When she touches someone, she does not just feel their emotions. She sees everything, every memory, every desire, every shameful thought they have ever hidden. No one wants to be exposed like that, so they stay away. That sounds lonely, Doyen said quietly. Corveth did not respond. He simply turned and continued walking, leaving Doyen to follow. The days passed slowly. Doyen was kept in his quarters most of the time, allowed out only for meals and supervised walks through the palace gardens. He saw other Valanthi, but none would speak to him. They looked at him like he was an animal in a cage, interesting to observe but not worth acknowledging. He tried to learn what he could. He watched how they moved, how they interacted with each other. The Valanthi were polite, formal, distant. They never raised their voices. They never laughed too loud. They never cried. It was like watching statues pretend to be alive. On the third night, Doyen got lost. He had been trying to find his way back from the dining hall when the corridors suddenly looked unfamiliar. Every hallway looked the same, endless crystal walls reflecting his confused face back at him. He wandered for nearly an hour before he found himself in a garden he had never seen before. It was smaller than the others, tucked away in a quiet corner of the palace. Strange flowers bloomed in colors that had no names on Earth. A small fountain sang softly in the center, its water glowing with gentle light. And standing before a floating screen of stars was Princess Lyrian. She wore simpler clothes than before, a flowing dress of deep blue that made her silver skin shine like the moon. Her long white hair fell freely down her back, no longer bound in the complex styles of the court. She looked younger like this. She looked sad. Doyen tried to step back to leave before she noticed him, but his foot struck a stone. The sound echoed through the quiet garden like a shout. Lyrian turned. Her violet eyes found him instantly, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "You should not be here," she said. Her voice was softer than he remembered, less like a princess and more like a woman. "I apologize," Doyen bowed his head. "I was lost. I did not mean to disturb you." "Lost?" She tilted her head, studying him the way a scientist might study a new species. "Your kind is always getting lost. In space, in yourselves, in each other." Doyen was not sure if she was insulting him or not. "We do our best," he said. Something flickered across her face. It might have been amusement. "Why did you not lie?" "Excuse me?" "In the throne room, when my father asked who you were, you could have lied. You could have claimed to be someone important. No one would have known." Doyen considered the question. "Would you have known if you touched me?" She stiffened slightly. "Yes. Then I would have been caught eventually. And even if I was not, what would be the point? I am who I am. Pretending otherwise would not change anything." Lyrian was silent for a long moment. Then she turned back to the floating screen of stars. Doyen realized she had been looking at a map of Earth's solar system. The small blue dot of his home world hung in the darkness, impossibly far away. "Why do you look at Earth?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Because I am trying to understand." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "My people think humans are primitive, dangerous, ruled by emotions they cannot control. But when I watched you in the throne room, you were not afraid. You were terrified, yes, I could see that. But you did not let that terror control you. You stood. You spoke. You showed respect without surrendering your dignity. How?" Doyen stepped closer, though he was careful to keep his distance. "We are afraid all the time. Every human is afraid every day. We are afraid of death, of failure, of being alone. But we have learned to live with fear, to walk beside it instead of running from it. Fear does not make us weak. It reminds us that we have something worth protecting." Lyrian turned to face him fully. Her eyes were bright with something he could not name. "My people gave up fear long ago. They gave up all strong emotion. They believed it was the only way to survive. But sometimes I wonder if survival is the same as living." "It is not," Doyen said softly. "Living means feeling, the good and the bad, the joy and the pain. You cannot have one without the other." She stepped toward him, and he saw something he had not seen in any Volanthi face before. Longing, deep, desperate longing for something she had never been allowed to have. "What does it feel like?" she asked. "To be touched without fear? To hold someone and feel only warmth, not their entire soul?" Doyen's heart ached for her, this powerful princess, surrounded by thousands, completely alone. "It feels like being found," he said. "Like someone is saying you are real. You matter. I see you. It is simple, but it is everything." Lyrian's hand rose slightly, as if she wanted to reach for him. Then she caught herself. She stepped back, her expression closing like a door. "You should return to your quarters, human. It is not safe to wander the palace at night." "My name is Doyen," he said. "Not human. Doyen." She stared at him for a long moment. Then so quietly he almost missed it. She repeated his name. "Doyen." He bowed once more and left the garden. But as he walked away, he could feel her eyes on his back. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that something had changed. The untouchable princess had found someone willing to see her as more than her power. And she did not know what to do with that. Neither did he. The formal evaluation began on the fourth day. Doyen was taken to a white room deep beneath the palace. Machines he could not understand surrounded him, their lights blinking in patterns that meant nothing to his human eyes. Volanthi scientists moved around him like ghosts, taking samples of his blood, measuring his brainwaves, recording every detail of his body. They treated him like a specimen. Not cruel, exactly, but not kind either. He was a thing to be studied, not a person to be known. Your species is physically weak, one scientist noted, her voice flat. Slow reflexes, poor hearing, limited vision spectrum. How have you survived this long? Doyen sat still as another machine scanned his chest. We work together. What one human cannot do alone, many humans can achieve. Inefficient, she replied. A stronger species would not need such cooperation. Maybe, but cooperation is also how we love, how we build families, communities, nations. Our weakness forced us to care for each other. I would not trade that for strength. The scientist did not respond. She simply wrote something on her pad and moved on to the next test. The psychological evaluation was worse. They placed Doyen in a dark room and showed him images. Some were beautiful, Earth's oceans, its forests, children laughing in sunlight. These images filled him with a homesickness so strong it hurt to breathe. Then came the other images. Wars, bombs falling on cities, bodies in mass graves, forests burning, animals dying, children crying in rubble. Doyen watched it all. He did not look away, though tears ran down his face. He did not have the right to look away. These were his people's crimes. This was humanity's truth. When the lights came back on, a Valanthi judge stood before him. His name was Corveth, though not the same Corveth who was Doyen's escort. Perhaps it was a common name. You weep, the judge observed. Why? Because those images show real suffering, Doyen said, wiping his eyes. Real people who died, real lives that were destroyed. How could I not weep? Your species caused that suffering. You should feel shame, not sorrow. I feel both. Doyen met the judge's eyes. Shame for what we have done. Sorrow for those we have hurt. Both emotions are true. Both deserve to be felt. The judge studied him for a long moment. Your emotional range is remarkable, exhausting, but remarkable. On the fifth day, Ambassador Yun Tai-sun arrived. The Valanthi had sent a second ship to Earth after learning of the clerical error. The real diplomat was finally here, and he was not happy about being overshadowed by a translator. Yun was a tall man with cold eyes and a colder smile. He had spent 30 years climbing the ranks of Earth's diplomatic corps. He knew how to speak to powerful beings. He knew how to make deals, and he knew how to eliminate competition. You have embarrassed our entire planet, he said when they were alone. A translator, standing before the High Sovereign like he had any right to be there. Do you know how this looks? Doyen kept his voice calm. I did not ask to be here. I have done my best with an impossible situation. Your best is not good enough. Yun stepped closer, his voice dropping. I am taking over. You will stay in your quarters and keep your mouth shut. If anyone asks, you will say you were merely my advanced scout. Understood? Doyen wanted to argue. But Yun was right about one thing. He was not trained for this. Perhaps a real diplomat could do better. Perhaps Earth deserved someone who knew what they were doing. Understood, he said quietly. But the Valanthi did not forget Doyen so easily. That evening, the court gathered for what they called a truth session. Both humans were required to attend. Doyen stood at the back of the room while Yun took the center, his chest puffed with importance. Commander Oryx stood before them. He was the military leader of the Dominion, a massive Valanthi with scars on his silver face and hatred in his violet eyes. He had fought wars against species far more dangerous than humans. He had burned worlds that threatened the Dominion, and he believed Earth should be one of them. Let us speak of what humanity truly is, Oryx said, his voice like thunder. Not the pretty words they offer, but the truth they try to hide. He waved his hand, and a massive screen appeared. It showed recordings of human history, but only the worst parts: genocides, torture, slavery, nuclear bombs, environmental destruction, famine caused by greed, children, soldiers carrying guns. The Valanthi court watched in disgusted silence. Yun's confident smile began to fade. He tried to speak, to explain, but Oryx cut him off. You cannot explain this away, human. This is what you are. Monsters wearing soft skin. You speak of cooperation and love, but your history is written in blood. Why should we trust you? Why should we let you spread beyond your tiny world? Yoon's face was pale. He looked at Doyen, desperate for help, though he had ordered him to stay silent. The court waited. The High Sovereign watched from his throne, his expression unreadable, and Princess Lyrian, Doyen noticed, was staring directly at him. Doyen stepped forward. "You are right," he said. The court murmured in surprise. Oryx's eyes narrowed. "What? Everything you showed is true. We have done terrible things. We have caused suffering beyond measure. We have been monsters." Doyen's voice was steady, though his heart was pounding. "But that is not all we are." He gestured at the screen. "Yes, we have waged wars, but we have also made peace. Yes, we have destroyed, but we have also created art, music, stories that make people cry and laugh and hope. Yes, we have hated, but we have also loved so deeply that we would die for strangers we have never met." He stepped closer to Oryx, though every instinct screamed at him to run. "You show our darkness because it is easy to hate. But where is the doctor who stays awake all night to save a dying child? Where is the firefighter who runs into burning buildings? Where is the mother who gives her last food to her hungry children? Where is the stranger who reaches out a hand to help someone who has fallen?" His voice grew stronger. "We are not perfect. We will never be perfect. But we are trying. Every single day we fight against our worst nature. We fall down and get back up. We hurt each other and apologize. We break things and rebuild them. That is humanity, not the monsters you fear, but the broken, stubborn, beautiful people who refuse to give up." The court was silent. Oryx's face twisted with anger, but he did not speak. And on her throne, Princess Lyrian's eyes were bright with something that looked almost like tears. That night, she came to Doyen's quarters. "Do humans truly feel so much?" she asked from the doorway, her voice barely above a whisper. "Does it not destroy you?" Doyen looked at her sad, beautiful face. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But it also saves us. Feeling everything means caring about everything. And caring is what makes life worth living." She was quiet for a long time. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Doyen alone with his thoughts and the weight of 8 billion lives still pressing on his shoulders. The secret meetings continued. Every night, after the palace grew quiet and the guards changed shifts, Lyrian would find Doyen in the small garden where they had first spoken. She never stayed long. An hour, sometimes 2. But in those hours, she asked questions that no other Valanthi had ever thought to ask. What does laughter feel like? What happens when you cry? Why do humans hold hands? What is the purpose of a hug? Doyen answered as best he could. He told her about his mother, who would hold him when he was scared as a child. He told her about his friend Jayun, who always knew when he needed a joke to make him smile. He told her about the warmth of human connection, the simple magic of someone choosing to be close to you. Lyrian listened with hungry eyes. She had lived her whole life surrounded by people who were afraid to touch her. Her gift had made her powerful, but it had also made her alone. She knew the secrets of everyone in the court, but no one knew hers. Until Doyen. "Why do you trust me?" she asked one night. "You know what I can do. You know that one touch would reveal everything you are. Aren't you afraid?" Doyen thought about the question carefully. "Maybe a little," he admitted, "but I do not think I have anything worth hiding. I am a simple man who got lost in the wrong place. My secrets are small. My regrets are ordinary. If you touched me and saw everything, you would probably be disappointed." Something flickered in her eyes. "I doubt that." On the 6th day, Ambassador Yoon made his move. He had been meeting privately with various members of the High Council, promising trade deals and technology exchanges. He told them that Doyen was an embarrassment, a mistake that Earth wished to correct. He assured them that humanity's real leadership was much more civilized, much more controlled. In other words, much more like the Valanthi. Doyen heard about these meetings from Corvette, who had grown slightly less cold over the past few days. The escort delivered the news with his usual flat voice, but there was something like concern in his eyes. "The ambassador is selling your kind as something it is not," Corvette said. "He promises that humans will suppress their emotions, follow our rules, become like us. Is this true?" Doyen sighed. "No, humanity cannot become something it is not. We feel. We always will. Ambassador Yoon is telling the council what they want to hear, but he is not telling them the truth. Then perhaps someone should, Corveth replied. That evening, the final state banquet was held before the council's vote. Every important Valanthi was present, along with both human representatives. The hall was filled with tables of strange food and the quiet murmur of formal conversation. Doyen stood at the edge of the room, trying to stay invisible. It did not work. Commander Oryx crossed the hall like a storm approaching. His violet eyes burned with hatred as he stopped in front of Doyen, towering over the human by nearly 2 feet. You should not be here, Oryx said, loud enough for everyone to hear. A primitive creature standing among civilized beings. It is an insult. Doyen kept his voice calm. I was invited by the High Sovereign himself. An invitation given in error. Oryx stepped closer. Your species is a disease. Emotional, irrational, violent. You spread across your world like a plague, destroying everything you touch. And now you want to spread to the stars? He laughed coldly. I will see Earth burn before I allow that. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward them. Ambassador Yoon stood frozen near the High Council, unwilling to intervene. He had already distanced himself from Doyen. He was not about to risk his negotiations now. Oryx reached out and shoved Doyen backward. The human stumbled, his back hitting a table, sending crystal glasses crashing to the floor. Pain shot through his spine. Blood dripped from where a shard had cut his lip. Get up, Oryx commanded. Show us the violence that hides inside every human. Show us the monster we know you are. Doyen stood slowly. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. His body screamed at him to fight, to run, to do something. But he forced himself to breathe. He forced himself to think. He looked directly at Commander Oryx and said nothing. What is wrong? Too weak to fight? Oryx laughed again. Or do you finally understand that your kind has no place among the stars? Doyen turned to face the High Sovereign, who watched from his throne with an expression of cold interest. Your Highness, Doyen said, his voice steady despite the blood on his face. If strength is only measured by cruelty, then perhaps it is the Valanthi who should fear what they have become. The silence that followed was absolute. Oryx's face twisted with rage. He raised his hand, ready to strike again. And then Princess Lyrian moved. No one saw her leave her throne. No one saw her cross the hall. One moment she was sitting beside her father, distant and untouchable. The next moment, she was standing in front of Doyen, her arms wrapped around him in an embrace. The palace fell silent. Not the quiet of surprise, not the hush of shock. True silence, so deep that Doyen could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his chest. 1,000 Valanthi stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight before them. The untouchable princess was touching a human. Through her skin, Lyrian felt everything. Doyen's fear, sharp and cold. His homesickness, a constant ache in his chest. His grief for a father who died when he was young. His love for a mother who waited alone on a distant world. His stubborn, burning hope that somehow, this would all work out. But beneath all of that, she felt something else. Something that made her gasp. Warmth. Pure, simple warmth. Not heat or fire, but the gentle warmth of sunlight on skin. The warmth of a blanket on a cold night. The warmth of someone who cared, truly cared, without expectation or demand. She had felt thousands of minds in her lifetime. Politicians scheming for power, courtiers hiding their jealousy, soldiers bearing their trauma. Every touch had shown her the darkness that people hid inside. But Doyen's mind was different. His darkness was there, yes. The fears and regrets and failures that every being carried. But it was not hidden. It was not shameful. It sat beside his light like an old friend, accepted and understood. This is what humans are, she realized. Not the monsters we feared, not the primitives we mocked. They are people who have learned to carry their pain without letting it crush them. She pulled back slowly, her hands still resting on his shoulders. Her eyes were bright with tears that Valanthi were never supposed to shed. He is not primitive, she said, her voice ringing through the silent hall. He is more alive than any of us. The court exploded into chaos. Commander Oryx demanded her arrest. Council members shouted at each other. The High Sovereign rose from his throne, his face a mask of cold fury. And Ambassador Yoon, Doyen noticed, was slowly backing toward the exit, but Doyen barely noticed any of it. He was staring at Lyrian, at the tears on her silver cheeks, at the wonder in her violet eyes. "What did you see?" he whispered. She smiled, the first real smile he had ever seen on her face. "Everything, and it was beautiful." Then the guards came, and they were torn apart, and the world descended into madness. They put Doyen in a cell deep beneath the palace. The room was small, barely large enough to hold a bed and a chair. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft light, beautiful in the way that a cage is beautiful when you are trapped inside it. There were no windows, there was no sound. He could have been anywhere in the universe, and it would have felt the same. He did not know what had happened to Lyrian. The guards had dragged her away before he could say anything, her father's voice echoing behind them. The High Sovereign had been angry, more than angry. The look in his eyes had been the look of a man whose entire world had just cracked apart. Doyen sat on the bed and waited. Hours passed, maybe days. He could not tell. Food appeared through a slot in the door, simple meals that he ate without tasting. He slept when exhaustion forced him to, and woke to the same glowing walls, the same silence, the same terrible uncertainty. On what he thought was the second day, the door opened. Park Jaeyeon stood in the doorway. She wore the uniform of Earth's military. Though it looked strange and out of place in this alien prison, her face was exactly as Doyen remembered. Sharp eyes, quick smile, the expression of someone who always had a plan. They had grown up together in Busan. She had been his best friend since childhood, and now somehow she was here. "Ji-yeon," he breathed. "How?" "I came with Ambassador Yoon on the second ship." She stepped inside, glancing over her shoulder. "I was assigned as his security detail. Lucky for you, because that man would let you rot down here if it helped his negotiations." "What is happening up there?" Jian sat beside him on the bed. "Chaos. Complete chaos. The princess broke their most sacred law. Half the council wants her executed. The other half wants to use this as an excuse to quarantine Earth immediately. Commander Oryx is pushing for war." Doyen's blood went cold. "War?" "He claims that you somehow corrupted the princess, that humans have some kind of mental power that can break through Valanthi defenses. It is ridiculous, but people believe what they want to believe." She paused, "especially when they are afraid." "And Lyrian, what happened to her?" Jian's expression softened. She had known Doyen long enough to recognize when he cared about someone. "She is confined to her chambers. Her father has been meeting with the council all day. They are deciding what to do with her. What are the options? She denounces you publicly, says she was mistaken, that what she felt was a human trick. She returns to her place as princess, and this whole thing gets swept under the rug." Ji-yeon paused. "Or she refuses, and she is exiled, stripped of her title, her home, everything." Doyen stood up abruptly. "I need to talk to her. I need to explain that this was not her fault. She should not throw away her life for me. You cannot. The palace is locked down. Guards everywhere. Oryx has his soldiers watching every corridor." Jian grabbed his arm. "Doyen, listen to me. You need to be smart about this. If you try to see her, you will make everything worse. But she saved me. She chose to touch me when everyone else stood back and watched. How can I just sit here and do nothing? Because sometimes doing nothing is the bravest thing you can do." Jian's voice was firm but kind. "Let her make her own choice. Trust her." Doyen sank back onto the bed. He knew she was right. He hated that she was right. Above them, in the palace's highest tower, Princess Lyrian stood before her father. The High Sovereign's chambers were vast and cold, filled with artifacts from 1,000 conquered worlds. Weapons, treasures, trophies of the Dominion's endless expansion. Lyrian had played among these objects as a child, never understanding what they truly represented. Now she saw them clearly, the remains of cultures destroyed by a people who had forgotten how to feel. "You have shamed our family," Vela said. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. "You have shamed our entire civilization. Do you understand what you have done?" "I have done what no one else was willing to do," Lyrian replied. I have touched someone honestly. I have felt what they feel, and I have learned that everything we believe about humans is wrong. They are primitives. They are alive. More alive than we are. More alive than we have been for centuries. She stepped toward her father, her hands spread in appeal. Father, you should feel what I felt. The depth of his emotions, the strength of his spirit, the way he carries his pain without letting it destroy him. Humans are not a disease. They are a mirror, showing us everything we have lost. Valeth's face remained cold. A mirror that shows our weakness is not a gift. It is a threat. Only if we are too afraid to look at ourselves. Silence filled the chamber. The High Sovereign studied his daughter, this strange creature he had raised but never truly known. She had always been different, too sensitive, too curious, too willing to question the rules that held their society together. He had hoped she would outgrow it. He had been wrong. The Council has given you a choice, he said finally. Denounce the human. Declare that his emotions confused you, tricked you into acting irrationally. Do this, and you may return to your place at my side. And if I refuse, then you are no longer my daughter. You will be exiled to the outer territories, stripped of title and protection. You will be alone, Lyrian. Truly alone. Is that what you want? Lyrian thought about the question. She thought about her life in the palace, the empty rooms and the silent halls, and the people who looked at her with fear instead of love. She thought about her mother who had died when Lyrian was young, leaving her with only her father's cold approval. She thought about all the years she had spent trying to be perfect, trying to be what everyone expected, trying to be anything but herself. And then she thought about Doyen, his kind eyes, his steady voice, the warmth that had flooded through her when they touched, a warmth she had never felt before in her entire life. I choose exile, she said. Valeth closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had died behind them. Then you are no longer welcome here. You have until morning to leave the palace. Lyrian bowed one final time. Goodbye, father. I hope someday you remember what it was like to feel. She walked out of the chamber without looking back. That night the princess came for the prisoner. She moved through the palace like a shadow using passages she had discovered as a lonely child. The guards did not see her. The cameras did not track her. She had spent years learning how to disappear in her own home. Now that skill would save someone else. Doyen looked up when his cell door opened. His eyes widened when he saw her. Lyrian? What are you doing? Rescuing you. She held out her hand. We need to leave now, before Oryx realizes I am gone. Leave? And go where? The outer territories. There are Valanthi there who rejected the emotional suppression. They call themselves the Unfettered. They have been watching humanity for years. They will help us. Doyen hesitated. But your home, your family, you are giving up everything for me. Lyrian smiled, and it was the saddest, most beautiful smile he had ever seen. I am giving up nothing. This place was never my home. These people were never my family. You showed me what real connection feels like. How could I go back to pretending after that? She reached out and took his hand, and this time, she did not feel his emotions flooding through her mind. She just felt his fingers, warm against her silver skin. It was enough. Together they ran into the darkness, leaving the Crystal Palace and its frozen people behind. The outer territories were nothing like the crystal cities of Valanthus Prime. Here, on a small moon orbiting a dying star, everything was rough and real. Buildings made of salvaged metal, streets covered in dust, people who wore their emotions on their faces like badges of honor. The Unfettered had built this place as a refuge for those who refused to become machines. Doyen and Lyrian arrived after 3 days of travel, hidden in a cargo ship that Yi Yin had arranged. The journey had been difficult. They had slept in shifts, eaten dry rations, and spoken in whispers to avoid detection. But through it all, something had grown between them. Not love, not yet, but something close, understanding, trust. The beginning of something neither had expected to find. The Unfettered welcomed them with open arms. Their leader was an old Valanthi named Soren, whose silver skin had faded to a pale gray. He had left the Dominion decades ago, tired of pretending that emptiness was the same as peace. He had built this community from nothing, gathering others who felt the same way. We have watched your world for a long time, Soren told Doyen. Your broadcasts, your music, your stories. We found hope in them, hope that the galaxy had not forgotten what it meant to feel. Why did you never contact us? Doyen asked. Because the Dominion would have destroyed us. They fear humanity for the same reason they fear us. You remind them of what they have lost. Emotions are contagious, young human. If your species joins the galactic community, others will start to wonder why they gave up their hearts. The Dominion cannot allow that. Lyrian stepped forward. Then we need to show them. We need to show the whole Dominion that feeling is not weakness. Soren smiled sadly. A beautiful idea, Princess. But Commander Oryx is already hunting you. His fleet surrounds this moon as we speak. He has been waiting for decades for an excuse to wipe us out. Now you have given him one. Through the small window of Soren's home, Doyen could see the stars. Among them, faint but growing, were the lights of warships. Dozens of them, arranged in a formation that screamed destruction. How long until they attack? Doyen asked. Hours, maybe less. Oryx will want to make an example of us. Gion, who had arrived with them, checked the weapon at her hip. Then we fight. How many people do you have here? 300, most of them children, artists, philosophers. They came here to escape violence, not to wage war. Soren shook his head. We cannot win this battle. The room fell silent. Outside, the lights of the warships grew brighter. Doyen stood slowly. His mind was racing, searching for solutions that did not exist. He was a translator, not a warrior. He had no weapons, no army, no power. All he had were words, but sometimes words were enough. I will go to them, he said. Everyone turned to stare at him. What? Lyrian grabbed his arm. That is suicide. Oryx hates you. He will kill you the moment you step aboard his ship. Maybe, but if I do nothing, he will kill everyone here. You, Soren, the children, all of you. I cannot let that happen. And what do you think you can do? Talk him out of attacking? No. Doyen met her eyes. I will offer myself in exchange. My life for the safety of this moon. If Oryx wants a trophy to bring back to the Dominion, let it be me. Jian shook her head. Doyen, this is insane. You are not a soldier. You are not a hero. You are just a translator from Busan who got lost in the wrong place. I know, he smiled sadly, but maybe that is exactly what is needed right now. Not a soldier, not a hero, just a person willing to stand up and say that some things are worth dying for. Lyrian's eyes filled with tears. You cannot do this. I did not save you just to watch you throw your life away. You saved me because you believed that humans were worth knowing. Let me prove you right. He took her hands in his. I do not want to die, Lyrian. I am terrified. But I am also tired of being afraid. If this is my last act, let it mean something. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she pulled him close and held him tight, her arms wrapped around him like she would never let go. Then I am coming with you, she whispered. Lyrian. No. You said humans do not face their fears alone. Neither will you. She pulled back and wiped her eyes. Besides, Oryx wants us both. Maybe together we can give him something he does not expect. Soren watched them with something like wonder in his old eyes. You truly are remarkable creatures, he said softly. Both of you. Doyen turned to Ji-Yun. If we do not come back, tell the Dominion what happened here. Tell them the truth about humanity. Tell them we tried. Ji-Yun nodded, her jaw tight. You will come back. You always survive, Doyen. It is the most annoying thing about you. He laughed, though it came out shaky. I will do my best. An hour later, a small shuttle left the moon's surface and flew toward the waiting fleet. Inside sat a human and an alien princess, holding hands in the darkness, preparing to face an enemy who wanted them dead. Commander Oryx received them on the bridge of his flagship. The warship was massive, filled with soldiers and weapons, and the cold efficiency of a military machine. Oryx stood at its center like a spider in a web, his scarred face twisted with satisfaction. The traitor princess and her human pet, he said. Did you come to beg for your lives? We came to make a deal, Doyen replied. His voice was steady. Let the unfettered go. Let this moon survive. In exchange, we will return to Valanthus Prime and face whatever judgment the council decides. Oryx laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You think you have bargaining power? I could destroy that moon in seconds. I could kill you where you stand. Why should I accept anything from you? Because this is not just about us, Lyrian said. This is about the Dominion. If you destroy this moon, you destroy any chance of my people remembering what they lost. You lock us into our cold, empty existence forever. That is exactly what I want. Emotions are weakness. They caused the Great Civil War. They nearly destroyed us. Suppression was the only answer. Suppression is not the answer, Doyen said. It is surrender. You did not defeat your feelings. You ran from them, and running does not make problems go away. It just means you are too afraid to face them. Oryx's eyes flashed with anger. He stepped forward, his massive form looming over Doyen. Watch your tongue, human. No. Doyen did not back away. I am tired of being careful. I am tired of being afraid. You want to know what humanity is? We are the species that looks at impossible odds and says no anyway. We are the people who fight battles we cannot win because the alternative is worse. We are broken, flawed, emotional creatures who refuse to give up. He spread his arms wide. So here I am. Kill me if you want, but know that there will be others. Other humans, other Valanthi, other beings across the galaxy who will hear about this moment and remember. You cannot suppress hope, Commander. You cannot bomb curiosity into oblivion. The universe is full of people who want to feel, and you cannot stop all of them. Oryx's hand moved to his weapon. His finger hovered over the trigger, and then a voice cut through the silence. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the High Council. Oryx froze. What? They are demanding an immediate ceasefire. The High Sovereign wishes to speak with the prisoners personally. Lyrian and Doyen exchanged shocked glances. Oryx's face contorted with rage. This is not over, he growled. Whatever happens next, know that I will be watching. And when your species shows its true nature, I will be there to end it. He gestured to his soldiers. Take them to the transport. The council wants them alive. As they were led away, Lyrian squeezed Doyen's hand. What just happened? She whispered. I have no idea, he admitted, but we are still alive. That is more than I expected. The shuttle that came for them carried a symbol Doyen had never seen before. Two hands clasped together, silver and gold intertwined. What does that mean? He asked. The pilot, a young Valanthi with surprisingly warm eyes, smiled. It means someone in the council finally remembered what we used to be. And for the first time in days, Doyen allowed himself to hope. The throne room was different this time. When Doyen had first stood before the High Council, the hall had been filled with cold faces and colder eyes. Now something had shifted. The 1,000 Valanthi still watched from their perfect rows. But there was movement among them, whispers, glances, the kind of tension that came before storms. Doyen stood at the center of the room once more. Lyrian stood beside him, her silver skin pale but her eyes bright. They held hands openly, no longer hiding what they had become to each other. Let the council see. Let everyone see. High Sovereign Valeth sat on his throne, his face a mask of stone. Commander Oryx stood at his right hand, barely contained fury radiating from every line of his scarred body. But there were others present too, council members who did not look at Doyen with hatred. Some even seemed curious. You have caused a great deal of trouble, human, Valeth began. His voice echoed through the chamber, carrying weight and weariness in equal measure. You came to our world as a mistake, and now stand before us as a threat to everything we have built. I did not ask for any of this, Doyen replied. I only wanted to show you who we really are. And what are you? Truly? The High Sovereign leaned forward. Speak plainly, Kang Doyen of Earth. The fate of your world hangs on your answer. Doyen took a breath. He thought about everything he had seen since arriving on Valanthus Prime. The crystal cities and the cold faces, the untouchable princess and her overwhelming loneliness, the unfettered hiding on their tiny moon, keeping hope alive in a galaxy that had forgotten how to feel. He thought about Earth, his mother waiting alone in their small apartment, his friend Jiyeon, always ready with a joke or a plan, the strangers who passed him on the street every day, each one carrying their own battles, their own dreams, their own beautiful broken hearts. "We are afraid," he said. The court murmured in surprise. Even Valeth's eyes widened slightly. "Every human is afraid, every day. We are afraid of death and pain and failure and being forgotten. We are afraid of the dark and the cold and the silence that waits at the end of all things." Doyen's voice grew stronger. "But we do not let that fear rule us. We learned long ago that fear is not the enemy. Giving up is." He stepped forward, looking directly at the High Sovereign. "Your people made a choice after your civil war. You decided that emotion was too dangerous, too painful. So you locked it away. You built walls around your hearts and called it peace. But it was not peace. It was death. A slow, quiet death that left you perfectly preserved, but completely empty." Oryx stepped forward angrily. "How dare you lecture us, primitive? Our civilization spans 17 star systems. What has humanity achieved?" "We survived," Doyen answered simply. "We faced every horror you showed me in that evaluation room. Wars and famines and plagues that should have destroyed us. But we are still here, still fighting, still reaching for the stars with hands that shake, but never stop trying." He turned to address the entire court now, speaking to every silver face and violet eye. "You ask what humanity is. We are the species that learn to dance with our fear instead of running from it. We are the people who build hospitals after disasters and plant trees we will never see grow tall. We are the creatures who fall in love, knowing we will one day lose everything, and choose to love anyway." His voice softened, but somehow it carried even further. "You are not our enemies. You are our teachers. Your technology, your knowledge, your achievements, they are amazing. But somewhere along the way, you forgot why any of it matters. Survival is not the goal. Living is. And living means feeling everything, the joy and the pain, the hope and the grief. It means being brave enough to connect with others, even knowing it might hurt." He reached out and took Lyrian's hand again. "Your princess taught me that Valanthi used to understand this. Before the war, before the suppression, you were a people of passion and creativity and love. That part of you is not gone. It is sleeping, waiting, hoping that someone would be brave enough to wake it up." He met Valeth's eyes. "When did you stop feeling? When did you decide that being perfect was worth being alone?" The silence that followed was absolute. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a sound broke through. Crying, soft, quiet sobbing from someone who could not hold it in anymore. One by one, Valanthi throughout the hall began to react. Some wept, some laughed. Some simply stood with expressions of wonder on their faces, as if seeing the world for the first time. They were the unfettered, Doyen realized. Not just on that distant moon, but hidden here, in the heart of the Dominion itself, waiting for permission to feel again. They removed small devices from their necks, the emotional suppressors that every Valanthi was required to wear. The suppressors clattered to the floor like chains being broken, and with each one that fell, another voice joined the chorus of emotion filling the hall. Commander Oryx watched in horror. "This is chaos," he shouted. "This is exactly what we feared. Stop this immediately." But no one was listening to him anymore. A woman crossed the room and embraced her husband for the first time in years. A father knelt and held his daughter, telling her he loved her with words he had forgotten how to say. Two brothers who had not spoken in decades clasped hands and laughed through their tears. The throne room of the Valanthi Dominion, the coldest place in the galaxy, was slowly coming back to life. Valeth watched it all from his throne. His face showed nothing. But Doyen noticed something he had not seen before. A single tear rolling slowly down the High Sovereign's silver cheek. Lyrian stepped toward her father. She stopped at the foot of his throne and looked up at him, not as a princess to a sovereign, but as a daughter to a father. "I remember, Mother," she said softly. "I remember how you smiled when she was alive, how you laughed at her jokes, even the bad ones, how you held her hand every evening and talked about nothing important. Do you remember that?" Valeth closed his eyes. "You told me once that losing her was the worst pain you had ever felt, that it nearly destroyed you. That is why you supported the suppression, was it not? Because feeling meant hurting, and you never wanted to hurt like that again." Lyrian, he whispered. But father, the pain was worth it. The love was worth it. Every moment you had with her was a treasure that cannot be replaced. Would you truly give all of that up just to avoid the grief? Valeth opened his eyes. They were bright with tears he had not shed in decades. No, he said, his voice breaking. No, I would not. He rose from his throne. Slowly, like a man waking from a long sleep, he descended the steps. He stopped in front of his daughter. Then the High Sovereign of the Valanthi Dominion, ruler of 17 star systems, wrapped his arms around Lyrian and held her close. I am sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry. She held him back, tears streaming down her face. I know. I forgive you. Doyen watched them with his own eyes stinging. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Ji-Yeon, standing beside him. Her usual tough expression softened by wonder. You actually did it, she said. You changed an entire civilization with a speech. I just told them the truth, Doyen replied. They were ready to hear it. They just needed someone to say it out loud. When Valeth finally released his daughter, he turned to face Doyen. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Perhaps, the High Sovereign said slowly, we have forgotten what it means to be alive. Then let us remember together, Doyen replied. Valeth nodded. He turned to address the court, his voice carrying through the chaos of emotion that filled the hall. The Council's decision is made. Earth will not be quarantined. Instead, humanity will be welcomed into our community, not as subjects, but as teachers. They will help us remember what we have lost. Commander Oryx stepped forward. Your Highness, this is madness. You cannot just... I can, Valeth interrupted. I am the High Sovereign, and I am tired of being afraid. He looked at Oryx with something almost like pity. You may join us in this new beginning, Commander, or you may remain frozen in your anger. The choice is yours. Oryx's face twisted with rage, but he said nothing. He simply turned and walked out of the throne room, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. Doyen watched him go. He knew this was not truly over. There would be others like Oryx, others who feared change, others who saw emotion as weakness. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but today hope had won. In the weeks that followed, Doyen became humanity's first true ambassador to the stars. He traveled between Earth and Valanthus Prime, helping build bridges between two civilizations that had more in common than either had realized. It was not easy work. There were misunderstandings, arguments, moments of frustration and doubt. But there were also moments of joy. Lyrian came to Earth with him. She walked the streets of Seoul and marveled at the noise, the chaos, the beautiful messiness of human life. She met Doyen's mother, who cried and hugged her and immediately began cooking enough food for 12 people. She learned to laugh freely, to cry without shame, to love without fear. And in quiet moments, when no one was watching, she would take Doyen's hand, not to read his emotions, but simply to hold on, to feel his warmth, to remind herself that she was not alone anymore. Thank you, she told him one evening, as they watched the sun set over the Han River. For what? For being lost, for stumbling into my garden, for showing me that there was another way to live. She squeezed his hand. For being human. Doyen smiled. We are all lost in our own way. The trick is finding someone to be lost with. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Above them, the stars began to appear, including one that was not a star at all, but the distant light of Valanthus Prime, two worlds learning to feel again, together. The palace had fallen silent on the day she hugged him, but now at last it was learning to sing.